Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's me, Nisi. Wanted to jump on here and just do a short pre-recorded video. It's been a minute since I've been on and done one. Happy Saturday, Saturnalia Day. Um, I wanted to read a couple of chapters of a book that I found. Um, this past week, I had to go pick up a package in one of the stores in the mall. And so when I went there to pick it up, I cut through Barnes and Noble and I saw a couple of books. And of course, I had to pick them up. Pretty short reads. This one that I got is a number one bestseller, supposed to be, okay? And it's called Tender is the Flesh. It is a fictional book, right? I wanted to take a break from reading Project 2025. And so I wanted to kind of unwind this weekend and not do a lot of thinking. So I wanted to read something and kind of get back into my arts and crafts, which is my crochet and latch hook. So I just want to read this chapter, a couple of chapters to you. It's called Tender is the Flesh. It's by Augustina Batstera. Okay, Batsterica. Augustina Batsterica. That's a mouthful. It's called Tender's the Flesh. This book will pull you in, take hold, and not let you go until you reach the final page. Without a doubt, my favorite read of the year. And this is one of the, reviews of the book from Christina Dockler, author of The Vox. So, just in case you want to pick it up, screenshot of the book. Picked it up at Barnes and Noble. And I said it's a fictional book, but it has so much truth in it because whether you know it or not, these things are actually happening right now. Okay, cannibalism is a thing, and I dare say it's not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. You just got to do your research. Um, Chief Red Wolf, my big brother Chief Red Wolf, was reading The Delectable Negro, and I think I'm going to read portions of that too for you guys. For those of you who haven't read it, this is a fictional book, but I dare say it's not that far off from reality of what we're going through, right? Let me get started. I don't want to chit chat. I just want to get in here and read. I just want to give you a background on it though. So this is about cannibalism. So if this is not your thing or you think it's too much graphic, keep scrolling. Chapter 1. And its expression was so human that it filled me with horror. Carcass. Cut in half, stunner, slaughter line, spray wash. These words appear in his head and strike him, just destroy him. But they're not just words. They're the blood, the dense smell, the automation, the absence of thought. They burst in on the night, catch him off guard. When he wakes, his body is covered in a film of sweat because he knows that what awaits is another day of slaughtering humans. No one calls them that, he thinks, as he lights a cigarette. He doesn't call them that when he has to explain the meat cycle to a new employee. They could arrest him for it, even send him to the municipal slaughterhouse and process him. Assassinate him would be the correct term, but it can't be used. While he removes his soaked shirt, he tries to clear a persistent idea that this is what they are humans bred as animals for consumption. He goes to the refrigerator and pours himself a cold water. He drinks it slowly. His brain warns him that there are words that cover up the world. There are words that are convenient, hygienic, legal. He opens the window. The heat is suffocating. He stands there smoking and breathes the still night air. With cows and pigs, it was easy. It was a trade he learned at Cyprus, the meat processing plant. He'd inherited it from his father. True, the screams of a pig being skinned could petrify you, but hearing protectors were used, and eventually it became just one more sound. Now that he's the boss, right hand man, he has to monitor and train the new employees. Teaching to kill is worse than killing. He sticks his head out the window and breathes the thick air. It burns. He wishes he could anesthetize himself and live without feeling anything. Act automatically, observe, breathe, and nothing more. see everything, understand, and not talk. But the memories are there, they remain with him. Many people have normalized what the media insists on calling the transition. But he hasn't, because he knows that the transition is a word that doesn't convey how quick and ruthless the process was. One word to sum up and classify the unfathomable: an empty word: change, transformation, shift, synonyms that appear to mean the same thing, though the choice of one over the other speaks to a distant view of the world. They've all normalized cannibalism, he thinks. Cannibalism, another word that could cause him major problems. He remembers when they announced the existence of the GGB, the mass hysteria, the suicides, the fear. After GGB, animals could no longer be eaten because they had been infected by a virus that was fatal to humans. That was the official line, you see. The words carry the weight necessary to mold us, to suppress our questioning, he thinks. Barefoot, he walks through the house. After the GGB, the world changed definitively. They tried vaccines, antidotes, but the virus resisted and mutated. He remembers articles that spoke of the revenge of the vegans, other about acts of violence against animals, doctors on television explaining what to do about the lack of proteins, journalists confirming that there wasn't yet a cure for the animal virus. He sighs and lights another cigarette. He's alone. His wife has gone to live with her mother. It is not that he still misses her, but there's an emptiness in his house that keeps him awake, that troubles him. He takes a book off the shelf. No longer tired, he turns on the light to read, then turns it off. He touches the scar on his hand. The incident happened a long time ago, and it doesn't hurt anymore. It was a pig. He was very young, just starting out, and hadn't known that the meat needed to be respected until the meat bit him and almost took his hand off. The foreman and the others couldn't stop laughing. You've been baptized, they said. His father didn't say anything. After that bite, they stopped seeing him as the boss's son, and he became one of the team. But neither the team nor the Cypress processing plant exists now, he thinks. He picks up his phone. There are 3 missed calls from his mother-in-law, none from his wife. Unable to beat the heat, he decides to shower. He turns on the tap and sticks his head under the cold water. He wants to erase the distant images, the memories that persist, the piles of cats and dogs burned alive. A scratch meant death. The smell of burned meat lingered for weeks. He remembers the groups in yellow, protective suits that scoured the neighborhoods at night, killing and burning every animal they crossed their paths. The cold water falls back onto his back. He sits down on the floor of the shower and slowly shakes his head. But he can't stop remembering. Groups of people had started killing others and eating them in secret. The press documented a case of 2 unemployed Bolivians who had been attacked, dismembered, and barbecued by a group of neighbors. When he read the news, he shuddered. It was the first public scandal of its kind and instilled the idea in society that in the end, meat is meat. It doesn't matter where it's from. He tilts his head up so that the water can fall onto his face. What he wants is for the drops to wipe his mind blank. But he knows the memories are there. There always will be. In some countries, immigrants began to disappear in large numbers. Immigrants, the marginalized poor, they were persecuted and eventually slaughtered. Legalization occurred when the governments gave in to the pressure from a big money industry that had come to a halt. Sounds familiar, don't it? Not long after, they began to breed people as humans to supply the massive demand for meat. He gets out of the shower and barely dries himself off. In the mirror, he sees there are bags under his eyes. He believes in a theory that some people have tried to talk about, but those who have done so publicly have been silenced. The most eminent zoologists, whose articles claim that the virus was a lie, had an opportune accident. Sounds really familiar, don't it, y'all? He thinks it was all staged to reduce overpopulation. For as long as he can recall, there's been talk of the scarcity of resources. He remembers the riots in the countries like China, where people killed each other as a result of overcrowding. Though none of the media outlets reported the news from the angle, the person who said that the world was going to explode was his father. The planet is going to burst at any minute. You'll see, son, it's either going to be blown to bits or all of us are going to die from some plague. Look at what's happening in China. They've already started killing themselves because there are so many people. There's no room for them all. And here, there's still room here, but we're running out of water, food, and air. Everything is going to hell. He looked at his father almost with pity because he thought he was just an old man rambling on, but now he knows his father had been right. Well, that's what they want you to believe. Dodge the hijack, you guys. This is just a fictional book I wanted to read because I found it interesting. Let me keep reading. The purge had resulted in other benefits the population and poverty had reduced, and there was meat. Prices were high, but the market was growing at an accelerated rate. There were massive protests, hunger strikes, complaints filled by human rights organizations, and at the same time, articles, research, and news stories had an impact on public opinion. Propaganda campaign, right? The United States media. Professors and researchers at prestigious universities claimed that the animal protein was necessary to live. Doctors confirmed that plant protein didn't contain all the essential amino acids. Experts assured that methane emissions from cattle had been reduced, but malnutrition was on the rise. Magazines published articles on the dark side of vegetables. See? The centers of protest began to disperse, and the media went on reporting cases of people that they said had died of animal virus. The heat continues to suffocate him. He walks to the porch naked. The air is still. He lies down in the hammock and tries to sleep. A commercial plays again and again in his mind. A woman who's beautiful but dressed conservatively is putting dinner on the table for her 3 children and husband. She looks at the camera and says, get this one, I serve my family special food. See my face? I serve my family special food. It's meat like I've always served, but tastier. The whole family and smiles and then eats dinner. The government, his government, decided to rebrand that product. They gave human meat the name special meat instead of just meat. Now there's special tenderloin, special cutlets, and special kidneys. He doesn't call it special meat. He uses the technical words to refer to what is a human, but will never be a person, to what is always a product. To the number of head to be processed, to the lot waiting in the unloading yard, to the slaughter line that must run in a constant and orderly manner, to the excrement that needs to be sold for manure, to the offal sector. No one can call them humans because that would mean giving them an identity. They call them the product or meat or food. Except for him, he would prefer not to have to call them by any name. And that was chapter 1. So what do y'all think? It's going to get crazy. I'm trying to tell y'all. Y'all want me to read chapter 2? I'm in 14 minutes in. Guess I can do another 15 minutes with you guys, right? All right. This is a good fiction. I just want to set the tone. All right, we're going to get into chapter 2. All right. It says, the road to the tannery always seems long to him. It's a dirt road that runs straight past kilometers and kilometers of empty fields. Once there were cows, sheep, and horses. Now there isn't anything for as far as the eye can see. His phone rings. He pulls over and answers the call. It's his mother-in-law. And he tells her he can't talk because he's on the road. She speaks in a low voice, in a whisper. She tells him that Cecilia is doing better, but that she needs more time. She's not ready to move back yet. He doesn't say anything, and she hangs up. The tannery oppresses him. It's the smell of wastewater full of hair, earth, oil, blood, refuse, fat, and chemicals. And it's Senor Onrome. The desolate landscape forces him to remember, to question yet again why he's still in this line of work. He was always at Cyprus for a year. He was only at Cyprus for a year after he finished the secondary school. Then he decided to study veterinary science. His father had approved and been happy about it. But not long after, the animal virus became an epidemic. He moved back home because his father had lost his mind. The doctors diagnosed him with the senile dementia, but he knows his father couldn't handle the transition. Many people suffered an acute depression and gave up on life. Others disassociated themselves from reality. Some simply committed suicide. He sees the sign, Hafu Tannery, 3 kilometers. Senor Arame, the tannery's Japanese owner, despises the world in general and loves skin in particular. As he drives along the deserted road, he slowly shakes his head because he doesn't want to remember. But he does remember his father talking about the books that watched over him at night. His father accusing the neighbors of being hitmen. His father dancing with dead wife. His father lost in the fields in his underwear, singing the national anthem to a tree. His father in a nursing home, the processing plant sold to pay off the debt and to keep the house. His father's absent gaze to this day when he visits. He enters the tannery and feels something strike him in the chest. It's the smell of chemicals that halt the process of skin decomposition. It's a smell that chokes him. The employees work in complete silence. At first glance, it seems almost transcendental, a Zen like silence, but it's Senor Arame who's observing them from up in his office. Not only does he watch the employees and monitor their work, he has cameras all over the tannery. Sound like a slave shop, y'all, among other things. No chit chatting. He goes up to Senor Urame's office. There's never a wait. Invariably, 2 Japanese secretaries greet him and serve him red tea in a transparent mug, not bothering to ask if he'd like any. He thinks that Senor Arame doesn't look at people, but instead measures them. The owner of the tannery is always smiling, and he feels that when this man observes him, what he's really doing is calculating how many meters of skin he can remove in one piece if he slaughters him, flays him, and removes his flesh on the spot. The office is simple, sleek, but on the wall hangs a cheap reproduction of Michelangelo's The Last Judgment. He's seen the print many times, but it's only today that he notices the person holding the flayed skin. Senor Arame observes him, sees the disconcerted look on his face, and guesses his thoughts. Says the man in St. Bartholomew, a martyr who was flayed to death, that it's a colorful detail, doesn't he think? He nods but doesn't say a word because he thinks it's a necessary detail. Senor Arame recites as though he was revealing a series of indisputable truths to a large audience. His lips glisten with saliva. They're the lips of fish or a toad. There's a dampness to him, a zigzag to his movements. There's something ill-like about Senor Arame. All he can do is look at the owner of the tannery in silence, because essentially it's the same speech every time. He thinks that Senor Arame needs to reaffirm reality through words, as though words created and maintained the world in which he lives. Silently, he imagines the walls of the office slowly beginning to disappear and the floor dissolving, and the Japanese secretaries vanishing into air, evaporating. All of this he sees because it's what he wants. But it'll never happen because Senor Arami is talking about numbers, about the new chemicals and the dyes being tested at the tannery, and telling him as though he didn't already know it, how difficult it is now with this product, that he misses working with the cow skin. Although he clarifies human skin is smoothest in nature because it has the finest grain. He picks up the phone and says something in Japanese. One of the secretaries come in with a huge folder. Senor Arame opens it and displays samples of different types of skins. He touches them as though they were ceremonial objects, explaining how to avoid defects when the lot is wounded in transit, which happens because human skin is more delicate. This is the first time Senor Arame has shown him the folder. He looks at the samples of skins that he had been placed in front of him, but doesn't touch them. Senor Arame points his finger at the very white sample with marks on it. He says it's one of the most valuable skins, though a large percentage of it has been discarded because there were deep wounds. He repeats that he's only able to conceal superficial wounds. Senor Rame says that the folder was put together especially for him so he could show it to the people at the processing plant and breeding center, and it would be clear which skins they have to be more careful with. Senor Arami stands up, gets a printout from a drawer, hands it to him, and says that he's already sent off the new designs for the cuts of skin. They still have to be perfected, though, because of the importance of the cut at the moment of flaying, since a poorly made cut means meters of leather wasted, and the cut needs to be symmetrical. Senor Rami picks up the phone again. A secretary comes in with a transparent teapot. He gestures to the secretary, and she serves more tea. Senor Rami continues to talk to him with words that are measured, harmonious. He picks up the mug, takes a sip, though he doesn't want any of it. Senor Rami's words construct a small, controlled world that's full of cracks, a world that could fracture with one inappropriate word. He talks about the essential importance of filleting machine, how if it's not calibrated correctly, it can rip the skin, of how the fresh skin he sent from the processing plant requires further refrigeration so that the subsequent flesh removal is not as cumbersome, of the need for the lots to be well hydrated so that the skin doesn't dry out and crack, of having to talk to the people at the breeding center about the importance of following the liquid diet, of how stunning needs to be carried out with precision, because if the products is slaughtered carelessly, it'll show on the skin, which gets tough and is even more difficult to work with because, he points out, everything is reflected in the skin. It's the largest organ in the body. His smile never fades. Everything is reflected in the skin. It's the largest organ in the body. Y'all get that? Man. Senor Arami exaggerates the pronunciation of the sentence in Spanish, and with it ends his speech, following with a measured silence. He knows he doesn't have to say anything to this man, just agree. But there are words that strike at his brain, accumulate, cause damage. He wishes he could say atrocity, incremency, excess, sadism to Senor Rami. He wishes these words could rip open the man's smile, perforate the regulated silence, compress the air until it chokes the both of them. But he remains silent and smiles. Senor Rame never accompanies him, but this time they walk downstairs together. Before he leaves, Senor Rame stops him next to a tank of whitewash to monitor an employee handling skins that are still covered in hair. They must be from the breeding center, he thinks, because the skins from the processing plant are completely hairless. Senor Rame makes a gesture. The manager appears and proceeds to yell at the worker who's removing the flesh from a fresh skin. It seems he's doing a poor job. To justify the employee's apparent inefficiency, the manager tries to explain to Senor Arame that the fleshing machine's roller is broken and that they're not used to manually flesh removal. Senor Arame interrupts him with another gesture. The manager bows and leaves. They then walk to the tanning drum, and Senor Arami stops and tells him he wants black skins. He wants black skins. Out of nowhere, with no explanation, he lies and says with a lot will be arriving shortly. Senor Rami nods and says goodbye. Whenever he leaves the building, he needs a cigarette. Inevitably, an employee comes over to tell him horrific things about Senor Arami. Rumor has it he assassinated and flayed people before the transition, that the walls of his house are covered in human skin, that he keeps people in his basement, and that he gives him great pleasure to flay them alive. He doesn't understand why the employees tell him these things. All of it's possible, he thinks, but the only thing is he knows for certain is that Senor Rami runs his business with a reign of terror and that it works. He leaves the tannery and feels relief, but then he questions yet again why he exposes himself to this. The answer is always the same. He knows why he does this work. Because he's the best and they pay him accordingly. Because he doesn't know how to do anything else. And because his father's health depends on it. There are times when one has to bear the weight of the world. And that's chapter 2. So, what do y'all think so far? Drop a comment in this video. So, this is the book. Of course, it's a fictional book. It's going to be a short read. I'm going to finish crocheting this baby blanket, I guess, for about another hour. I started on a new pattern, and it's for a coworker. And I'm going to work on that a little bit. Got some laundry to do, and then I'm going to pick this book back up, and I'm going to really try to get halfway through it tonight and then finish it up tomorrow. And then I'll give you my thoughts on this. But this is a pretty amazing read. The fact that someone would come up with a fictional book like this, and it's supposed to be a bestseller. Chief Red Wolf had mentioned a while back that there are actual restaurants that do serve human meat. I don't know how true that is, and I would say that he wouldn't lie about anything like that. But of course, it's in California, my home state. Crazy mofo's out there. I guess you could look it up and research it. They'll probably try to fact check it on Snopes or whatever and say it's not true. But we all know with all the things that are going on with the child trafficking, the human trafficking, the organ donations, it's been said for many, many years that some of these restaurants have been mixing in that special meat in with the meat that we consume in these restaurants like McDef, Burger Kill, Taco Hell, those types of places. So I'm just going to say this. I posted a video on Facebook that talked about how they're taking skin cells from actual animals and growing them in these bioreactive vats or containers, and that now they've passed legislation, I think in a couple of states, where these companies can go in and start manufacturing these cells from animals and growing lab grown meat. And so we're going to start seeing that in restaurants, and we're going to start seeing it in stores. And I don't know what the labeling or packaging is going to be. I'm going to have to deep dive into that a little bit more. But I just wanted to read this book to you because I found it fascinating. And it's, it's a difficult subject to talk about because it's wrong on so many levels. And, it's taboo. But yet the book Delectable Negro, I'm going to read from that. And that is actually a real documented thing that happened throughout history where people of different color would consume the melanated flesh because they felt like that would give them power, right? And they took on this role of doing this, and that's documented, and it's a fact, okay? So I just wanted to read this to you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you want me to come back and read chapter 3, I can most definitely do it. We read 2 chapters today, and I could come back and maybe read chapters 3 through 5 because they're really short. And, like I said, this isn't for kids. This video is not for kids. It's not made for kids. It's made for adults. But I wanted to share this book with you. It's a fictional book. I am going to come back and read Delectable Negro. Just read certain chapters of that. And I want to do a cross comparison of the two because my mind goes there with this author. Like, where did she get this stuff from? Like, she dreamed it up. She thought it up. Yes, but I truly believe there is some truth in some of this stuff. Right? Because I've seen videos of them doing things to human bodies. And yeah, so, it's out there. It's on the dark web. I mean, I'm just saying. So you can see all kinds of things that you shouldn't see on the dark web. My thing is that the more we research, the more we understand that things are totally amuck and we're living in a perversion. So, the fact that this is a number one bestseller and, I think it's an interesting read. I can't wait to finish the book this weekend and let you guys know how it is. But just the fact that my mind goes there to this author, and, for me, it's like there's a smidge of truth in there. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great afternoon. Thanks for joining me. And I will be back with another read and another short video. All right. I'll talk to you guys soon. Remember what I always say, be the change you want to see all around this planet, because it's up to you and I to make a positive change in this ethos.